The information presented is for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are not necessarily the opinions of any Daikin company. This information should not be confused for accounting, legal, medical, or other professional advice. Please seek advice from a qualified professional for any specific questions.
Welcome to the Accelerated HVAC Success Program. My name is Ben Middleton. I'm the National Sales Training Manager for the Goodman, Amana, and Daikin brands. Today I'm joined here with Brigham Dickinson, author of several books, and today we're here to talk about a brand new book that you have coming out. But Brigham, before we get into that, tell me, how in the world did you get into the HVAC industry?
Oh, I love that question. Are you familiar at all with Kevin Comerford?
I am.
Royal Hockley?
I am.
Those are two names that are life-changing for me. Royal Hockley found me at a company called Ascend Marketing. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, you're doing such a great job for us on our marketing. Why wouldn't you want to jump into this industry?" And I said, "Well, I'm open to it. What do you have in mind?" He says, "Well, we need to talk to your boss first." And I said, "Yeah, that's probably a good idea." So he reaches out to my boss, and luckily my boss is okay with it. And his name is Jim Ackerman, another titan in my life. And he was okay with it. He was cool with it. And so Royal came to my house, sat down with my wife and my one-year-old baby at the time and said, "Hey, let's do this. Let's get into this industry." And so he had me become the lead coordinator at Arctic Air in Chico, California. I still remember the jingle. Just call Arctic Air. The people who care. It's good stuff. And he wanted me to do the lead coordinating for his comfort advisors, as well as answer phones. And I thought to myself, come on now. Anybody can answer phones. He had me do the marketing as well, which obviously is my background with Ascend Marketing. In fact, I got my degree in marketing, as a matter of fact. I thought for sure I was going to be a marketing muckety-muck. But Royal gave me this opportunity. He said, "Hey, I want you to answer these phones, do a good job, take care of these comfort advisors." Within about 2 months of working for Royal and Arctic Air, Kevin Comerford called me. At the time, he was over Arctic Air as well as several other heating and cooling companies in California. So Kevin calls me up and he says, "Hey, I want to spend some time with you." And I thought for sure it was because of my marketing abilities. And I planted out all these great marketing ideas because I wanted to work with all the other companies he was working with. So he comes to Arctic Air, sits down with me in like a lunchroom, and he says, "How's it going, Brigham?" I'm going great. And I just rolled out all these marketing ideas, and he let me go for about 5 minutes. It was super nice. And after that, he said, "Well, this is all great, Brigham." He moves all this stuff aside, and he says, "Show me how you're going to answer the phones." And I was like, "Okay. This is Brigham with Arctic Air." And he's like, "Is that it?" And I said, "Well, yeah. What else is there?" And for the next 2 hours, he drills me on how to answer the phone. And that's when I began to realize, oh my gosh, this is a whole lot more important than I realized. And then since then, I've been training CSRs, dispatchers, lead coordinators, and in time built up a multi-million-dollar company doing exactly that, training people, training CSRs, dispatchers, lead coordinators, how to book the call, wow the customer, and help contractors make more money. So that's how I got my start in the industry.
So you started out in the industry, you thought you were going for marketing, and you started really working with customer service and growing that. At some point in time, you decided to go out on your own.
Yeah.
And so I love that story. You talk about that a little bit when you decided to go out on your own. And again, I think you were putting together marketing programs.
That's right.
And realized real quickly that that was going to take a shift as well.
Yeah, so I was in Utah at the time, and I was working with Troy Nearings Plumbing and Heating, and boy, Troy, he was something else. He brought me in one day and he said, "Hey, these advertising leads that you're generating, they're no good." And I said, "What do you mean they're no good?" And he said, "Well, they just want a ballpark price. They just want to know what you charge them out. They just want to talk to a technician." And I said, "Well, Troy, those are opportunities. Those are leads. it's not my marketing. Obviously, you're getting phone calls. And he said, well, what do you think it is? And I said, your team needs training. They need training, and guess what? I know how to train them. I can train them to book those calls, wow those customers. Just give me a chance. And he said, all right, I'll give you a month to increase their call conversion. I said, okay, sounds good. So I trained his team, and next thing you know, he started booking calls, wowing customers. His call conversion went up like 20% in that month. And then I got a call from his buddy in Boulder, Colorado, Tom Robichaud in Boulder, Colorado, Precision Plumbing and Heating. And he says, hey, I hear you're training Troy's team. And I said, yeah. Yep, I'm working with Troy's team. He said, well, why don't you work with my team? I said, sounds good, but I need to do your marketing. And he's like, well, I've got that covered, but I'll pay you to train my team. And of course, the light bulb came up over my head. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll train your team and you'll pay me for it. He's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying, Brigham. All right, cool, awesome. So I started training his team. His call conversions went up. Next thing you know, Troy and Tom got together and started talking about Micah Guglielmo and how we just got to get Brigham with Micah Guglielmo, and then he'll just skyrocket. And so they referred me to Mike, gold medal in East Brunswick, New Jersey. And Mike calls me up and he says, all right, sounds like you're training some CSRs, would like you to train my CSRs. And if you do a good job, I'll refer you to everybody I know. All right, sounds good. I didn't realize that he knew just about everybody in the cooling industry. So he started referring me to a ton of contractors, and I started hiring all my friends. And you know, Ben, I don't have a lot of friends, and they all started working with me. And of course, the rest is history. We're training. We went from training 6 CSRs at Nearings Plumbing and Heating, and now we have well over 1,000 trainees in our program, CSRs, dispatchers, lead coordinators throughout the industry.
So you started to build up this training organization. You came up with the Pattern for Excellence. It was kind of a model that you built and put together.
Yeah, so that's an interesting story too. In 2008, I had a company that went kaput. Right, it was going to go gangbusters. I was super excited about it. It was supposed to do a manual J in 5 minutes, and it was just going to blow up. Right, and it's a company that just within about 5 months it was over. Right, super painful experience for me. And I can remember going to a Barnes and Noble at the edge of the city there in Florida where I lived back in 2008. I couldn't bear to go back into the office. I was just so depressed. But at this Barnes & Noble, I just beelined it to the sales section. And of course, there's Jeff Gitomer. You can buy all of his books. You can buy his CDs. And oh my gosh. So I ended up buying his book and his CD at the time, right? That's what we had as CDs. Put the CD in and played it in my car while I drove around the city. And within about 5 minutes, I thought, oh my gosh, this is the sappiest thing ever. All he talked about was positivity, you gotta be positive. It was so sappy. And in the back of my head, I was like, my gosh, how can anybody listen to this? And at that exact moment, Jeff says, and if you think this is sappy and ridiculous, give it to somebody else, watch them get rich and happy. And then I thought, oh, okay, he's talking to me. So I kept playing, kept listening. And that company obviously never went anywhere. But it was super instrumental in helping me let go of the marketing idea, the marketing thing, right? And focus in on what the industry needs and how I can give to this industry that I love. And so I ended up driving back to Utah. I left all my kids and my wife in Florida while I figured out what the heck I was going to do in Utah. We had family in Utah. I just needed to find a place and work and all that jazz. And so I ended up staying in my brother-in-law's basement on a cot. And lots of studying and you know, lots of praying, lots of just pleading. And one morning, woke up from the cot with an idea. And it turned out to be the Pattern for Excellence, 8 principles to help you win the moment, right? And that's what it's about. It's about winning moment after moment, and the accumulation of moments interpersonally. You can create wow experience after wow experience for your customers. And what's interesting is that it was that same day that I approached Troy Nearings And he said, hey, I need to let you go. And I said, hey, I have this idea to train your team. And it was that wheel, it was that pattern that I used to train the team. The thing that I drew up on a cot in my brother-in-law's basement.
So you came up with this pattern for excellence. And with the pattern for excellence, I think came your first book.
Yeah. Yeah, 2016, wrote the first book, and it was all about the pattern and how to apply it to book the call while the customer, and of course, as a contractor, make more money. Great book, super fun to write it, super fun to distribute it. It was awesome.
And so during this time, obviously you had your kids, you had your wife, they moved over back to Utah with you. You guys all moved back eventually to Utah. Your family's growing, and you're going out and you're helping all of these customer service folks really win these moments, right? And work with the pattern for excellence. And then you kind of had a new thought or a new idea, and you kind of applied the pattern for excellence a little bit differently.
Well, what's interesting is that I was helping everybody else apply the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, my company was plateauing. I couldn't grow. I couldn't move. We were stuck. And being stuck for a year is fine. Being stuck for 2 years, boy, that's difficult. That gets a little bit more uncomfortable. Then being stuck for 3 years, okay, that's unbearable. I was at an event once during that third year, and a contractor came up to me, and he was all excited. He's like, oh my gosh, Brigham, I see you at every event. You're everywhere, man. And I realized in that moment that he was absolutely right. I am everywhere, and I'm exhausted. And I didn't know where to turn. I mean, I was working 80 hours a week. Personally, my marriage was falling apart. I was hearing things like, I'm sick of being a single wife or a single mom. Painful stuff. And so I hired a coach. Crazy thing, right? Coaching company. I own a coaching company, yet I need a coach. So I hired this coach, and he has me work from home with him. In the back of my head, I was going, okay, this sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit, right? You know, we're gonna go work at your house. We're gonna be buddies. We're gonna be friends, right? You've heard this before. I've heard this before. I'm a little concerned about this, right? But he said, no, we really need to work at the house. And so on Mondays he'd come. It was $1,000 a day. So every Monday I wrote him a check for $1,000. First thing he does on the first this coaching experience together at my house, he has me turn off my phone, which was super hard. And he starts asking questions. Where do you see this company going? How are you going to get there? And these how and why questions over and over and over again. At some point, I thought to myself, wait a minute. I'm paying you to answer these questions. Why am I answering? Wait a minute. I'm going to answer my own questions? I'm going to keep my $1,000. Right? This is ridiculous. But at the end of the day, we had oversized sticky after oversized sticky all over my walls. Mm-hmm. Right? My kids would come home from school going, Dad, what happened to the house? Right? It was crazy. But he helped me realize that I'm the problem. And I'm also the solution. And what's crazy is that I began to apply the very same pattern that I was teaching everybody else into my own work. And as soon as we did that, we were able to push through that first plateau. And I was able to get out of my own way. Instead of me being in the limelight, I began to help my team get into the limelight. They were the hero. And I stepped back. And we began to grow. And we've been growing ever since. We haven't stopped growing since then. And that's what motivated the second book, where I realized I was the problem. And in order to get out of my own way, I needed to grow the company. And in order to do that, I needed to get out of my own way.
One of my favorite stories that I hear you tell, and you've told it so many different times, and I'd love for you to share it now, is you talk about when you're with your son and his wrestling coach, and you guys decide that you're going to go and do a run through the mountains. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the stuff that you've done in terms of the Spartan races.
Sure.
But Tell me a little bit about that experience and how that applies to the second book.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. It's about falling forward, learning to fall forward, right? So my son had a awesome wrestling coach, Pat Garcia, super cool guy. His kids were both in wrestling. My son's in wrestling. And we wanted to do a run on a weekend. And look, if I were to wrestle Pat Garcia, I'd get trashed, right? It'd be over very quickly. He wrestled in college and so on and so forth. But this is a run, Ben. Mm-hmm. And on a trail run, that's my thing. Let's go, right? So I thought to myself, hey, it's going to be a fun run. We're all going to have a great time. So the wrestling kids show up. Pat Garcia shows up. I show up. We're all ready to rock. We're going to have this great, fun, team-building run. Mm-hmm. Until Pat Garcia's kids start chatting it up with my son, saying that their dad can beat his dad. As soon as I overheard that, I thought, okay, cool. Game on. Let's go. Let's roll. And we started running up the hill. And Pat set the pace. I let him set the pace. I was in the back, just seeing where the pace was going to be at. And as soon as he set the pace, I gun it. I run it past all the wrestlers, get in front of Pat, and just book it up the hill right in front of him. And I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be easy, piece of cake. Nobody's following me. I look behind myself around a turn, and there's Pat Garcia giving chase. And I'm like, okay, it's on. So the two of us began to race all out. I mean, just imagine two competitive individuals. It was dumb. Okay, we were blitzing, and it was only a 5-mile run, but it was probably 1,500 feet of elevation gain. So there was some work involved, and we completely ditched the kids. They were gone, right? They were way behind us, and I can remember getting to the metaphorical finish line. Right? Whatever. It's not even a race. This was not the Olympics. But of course I won. If you were wondering, of course I won, right? I was 30 seconds ahead of him. And I can remember putting my hands up in the air going, oh my gosh, I win. Yeah, what's up? And he's like, hey, good job, good job. And we both look back and we're like, where are the kids? And they were nowhere to be found. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, what have I done? You see, in that moment, even though for a split second I thought I won, I realized, no, you lost. You lost. Why? This wasn't about me. And that's what I made it about. I made it about me. It was supposed to be a team-building event. It was supposed to be about the kids. And I made it about me. And what happens is that we find ourselves in moments. Mm-hmm. And if we don't recognize we're in a moment, our default mode is we think about ourselves, we think selfishly, and as a result, we fail that moment. But if we can recognize that we're in a moment that we can really, truly win, and that it's not about us. It's not about me, right? It's about us, rather. Boy, if you can recognize that moment, you're going to win it. And when you win it, it benefits you. It benefits those that you're serving. That's a real win. And so the second book is about recognizing truth, right? Truth, it's absolute. And some people, they tend to take truth and go, okay, this is my truth and that's your truth and we can have different truths and that's okay. Well, that's not okay. You can have a belief and it may differ from my belief and that is okay. But truth, that's different. Truth is like, let's say that my truth is like planting an apple seed. And my truth is that when I plant an apple seed, one day when I water it and I give it plenty of soil and plenty of sun, it's going to be a beautiful peach tree. Now that's my truth. Well, the problem with that truth is that it's not going to happen. Because the absolute truth is that when you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree. And that's just the truth. It's absolute. It's going to happen that way. And so when we recognize truth and we apply that truth and we act rightly, that we do what's right as opposed to what's easy in that moment, you'll find that you'll get the happy consequence, the consequence that you wanted, right? Sometimes we have a tendency to believe that consequences are only bad. No, consequences are just consequences.
Right.
And so you apply that truth in a pivotal moment to get the happy consequence. And that's what that book is about, recognizing what true leadership is by applying the pattern for excellence in your own life.
So that brings us to our third book.
Yeah.
You've written Something to Give, A Journey to Become a Leader Worth Following. Tell me a little bit, what inspired you to write this particular book?
So it got to a point in my business where I began to step out of the limelight and let others become the hero. It only took me 15 years to figure that one out. And once I figured it out, as I visited other contractors, other companies, and funny thing, I saw them doing the same thing I was doing, 80 hours a week, where they were Johnny on the spot, hero for everyone, except for themselves. And so what I've done in this book is I've outlined step by step how to work yourself out of the business and let it run by itself completely, fully. And the cool thing about this is that you get to be the cheerleader. And then there's some things that owners don't want to stop doing, and that's okay. If it's one thing, great. If it's two things, great. If it's 20 things, not great. Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to pull back, let others grow. Just like you've given yourself the leeway to grow, you've got to let others grow as well. And so it's a step-by-step program to get out of your own way, to get out of the business and let it work by itself so that you can work on it. We've gone to so many events, Ben. So many events. And at each of those events, you have someone who says, you got to work on the business and not in it. Well, nobody really shows you how. How do you do that? And that's why I wrote the book.
So one of the things you talk about in there is how meekness is not weakness. Can you tell me a little bit about that when you apply that to leadership?
Yeah. So as a business owner, you tend to build an ego. And I know those that are listening on this podcast are like, oh, I don't have an ego. Yes, you do. We all do. We all do. We have this need to feel important. We have a need to feel worthy. We're driven by these needs. And because we're driven by these needs, we do have an ego. And as such, we have a tendency to want to be the hero at all times. And that also means that we can never, ever, ever make mistakes. Now, the difficulty there is that if we cannot accept our own failures and admit them, how can we possibly expect our team to admit their own failures? How can we ever expect them to take ownership of their actions if we don't take ownership of our own actions? So the power of meekness, in other words, being able to address your team and say, hey, this happened and it's my fault. And I'm sorry. And I'm going to do better. Imagine how powerful that is to your team. Imagine how that shows them by the example that you set, how to take ownership of your stuff, your responsibilities. Meekness is strength. And consider the people who have it. Martin Luther King, is he a weak person? I don't think so. Gandhi, weak person? No. Jesus Christ, weak person? No. But he said himself that the meek will inherit the earth. So no, meekness is not weakness. It is powerful. It is strength. And it's absolutely something a leader should have.
So one of the analogies you make is that you need to be the painter and not the paint.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the funny thing about paint is that it could be used to create a beautiful tapestry. Right? There's some great paintings out there. But if you are the paint, you're stuck in that specific spot for the rest of your life on one painting. But when you recognize that you are the painter, in other words, you're the creator, you have the ability to create tapestry after tapestry after tapestry. And that's what it's all about. It's about building. It's about creating. But if you're stuck in one job for an extended period of time, it impairs your ability to paint other tapestries. So being able to take a step back, letting others lead, letting others be in the limelight gives you the ability to create other businesses, other opportunities, community outreaches. I've had the opportunity to build a company called AthleteCare. And this is something completely out of left field. It's a post-workout recovery company. So basically, at the end of a workout, regardless of what it is, And say you like to play flag football or soccer or do a trail run or whatever it is. When you get to, I don't know, 47 years old, it's a lot harder to recover. And so what I've done is I've put an athletic trainer, a person who can stretch you out, a masseuse, a chiropractor, all under one roof. And there's a monthly price, right? So you come in at whatever you want. You don't have to schedule an appointment at all. You simply come. You can go in twice a day if you want to. Can you imagine the opportunity, the ability to go in twice a day, get worked on, stretched out, so on and so forth? I set it all up, got it all running by itself within about 18 months. And we have 2 locations now. So the first one took me 15 years to figure out how to get it running by itself, how to get Power Sling Pros running by itself. Once I figured out how to do it, well, then I was able to do it again with AthleteCare. And that's profitable. That's going great right now. It's going gangbusters. Another company, a night answering service called Booked by PSP, also running completely by itself. And I was able to do that in about 2 years as well. So once I figured it out, it became well, a lot easier. I'm not going to say super easy because it's freaking hard, right? It's hard work. But once you have it all set up and you give people the opportunity, the right people, it can be a very fun and rewarding thing.
So how do you apply the pattern for excellence to leadership?
I'm glad you asked. So just like you want your CSRs to be super positive over the phone, why? Because their positivity attracts people. Well, guess what? Your positivity as an owner is going to attract people. These are principles. And principles are true regardless of the circumstance. So whether you're a leader, whether you're filling a specific role in your job, whether it's community outreach, whether it's in your church, you can apply these principles. I mean, when you look at them, positivity, preparation, listening skills, empathizing, caring, reassuring, all these things you can apply in all aspects of your life. In fact, most of the employees, when they first get started, they all talk about how it affects their families in a very positive way. That when they apply the same principles, they're teaching their CSRs in the home, they find that things go a whole lot better. A funny thing, when you listen to your kids and you care about them and you reassure them on a regular basis, it's going to have a positive impact on them. And the same thing as a leader. If you can apply those same principles, the listening, the caring, the reassuring, asking the right questions, creating value for others, being grateful, when you apply these principles, my gosh, it's going to be a boon for your life, not just for the workplace.
So this book's a very easy read.
Yeah.
Did you do that on purpose? We were talking before we even got on here, hey, this is like a one airplane book.
Well, whether I meant to do that or not, I don't know. It's just the way that I talk. My intention was to have a conversation with the contractor. And my hope is that when they read the book, they'll feel like it is a conversation. It is one individual, one business owner to another, just like we're talking across the table here. I hope that when they read it, they see how much I care about them, how much I care about their success and their family. It takes a lot of courage to go out on your own and start a business. And you know what? Sometimes you get stuck. And if you don't get unstuck quickly, it could affect things. It could affect your family. It could affect your life. And my goal with this book is for them to read it, easily understand what needs to be done, and feel like they can do it. Because, Ben, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Anybody.
So you've been participating in Spartan races for quite a long time. What in the world is a Spartan race, and why would you put yourself through such a beatdown?
I'm glad you asked. Well, I've told you back in 2008 when things didn't go well, right? We had a business that went under, and that was extremely painful. I grew up poor, and that was my biggest fear. It still is my biggest fear. I just never wanted my kids to go through that. And when I realized that they were going to have to go through that, It was super painful for me. I felt like such a failure. And what blossomed out of that pain was the pattern for excellence. So I realized later on that I needed to find a way, an outlet, to manufacture those feelings, recreate them in a controlled environment. So I had a brother-in-law who invited me to a Spartan race, which is an obstacle course race, 13 miles, half marathon with about 3,000 to 5,000 feet of elevation gain. And you're climbing up roads and you're carrying buckets of rocks. And the first time I did it, it took me 4 hours to complete. And what's interesting on this road to finish this race, I saw ripped individuals with cramps, laying on the ground, crying like babies. I saw individuals that were in super great shape, but they were vomiting on the side of the race. And I thought to myself, my gosh, if I can do this, I can do anything. And what's interesting is during that first race, I began to feel the same emotions that I felt back in 2008. I felt exhausted. I felt tired. I felt like my body was just in pain and I didn't want to go any further. I didn't want to do anymore. I wanted to quit. And I got excited. I got excited because I know what these feelings are and I know what happens as a result of these feelings if I respond to them correctly. And so in a way, Spartan races can exercise your mental toughness. How cool is that? In a controlled environment, being able to exercise that mental toughness on a regular basis. So, for example, when COVID hit, I knew exactly how it felt. And that was a tough day. I mean, we had a third of our business call us within a week saying they can't afford us anymore. We lost $50,000 a month in reoccurring revenue. Super painful experience. But I knew how it felt because I had been training on a regular basis. I was acquainted with it. I was able to greet it and respond accordingly to it. And that's exactly what I did with my team. I said, you guys, we were born for this. We're born for something like this. And I promise you, we're what contractors need right now. And as a result, we were able to double our business in 2021. And we haven't looked back. But yeah, that's the reason why I do Spartan races. To exercise my mental toughness and remind myself on a regular basis what adversity feels like and how to respond to it.
So I know I've heard you tell this story many times, and I think it'd be, in terms of the Spartan race, you had a contractor at one point in time that said, hey, Brigham, I want to go on a Spartan race with you that you brought out with you. Tell me a little bit about that.
All right. So Crandall's one of my favorite individuals. 6'5", 250 pounds. He and several other business owners were anxious to go with me and participate in a Spartan race. I'm pretty sure that the reason why they want to participate is because the race was in Hawaii. And why not? Let's do it, right? Let's go to Hawaii and have an excuse to go on vacation there. And I said, all right, sounds great. But when Crandall said he wanted to do this, I thought to myself, my gosh, his body's not built for this kind of race. He's going to die. I was really concerned about it. Hot, 100% humidity, 5,000 feet of elevation gain. This was not his race. I was concerned about it. He's like, Brigham, I got this. Just tell me what I need to do. And I said, okay, I'll give you a training regimen. You got to follow it. He says, sounds good. So over 6 months, he lost 40 pounds following this regimen. It's amazing. It's so incredible. I was still concerned about him. And I wanted to make sure that he finished. And so the day of the race, my race started at 8:30 in the morning. And the race for all the other business owners started at 10:30, so about 2 hours later. And I told the group, I said, you guys, as soon as I'm done with my race, I'm going to go back out on the field. I'm going to make sure everybody gets in. I said it to everybody, but guess who I was talking to? Crandall. Mm-hmm. I wanted to make sure he knew that I was going to be there for him. And so what's interesting about that race is that year I wanted to get on the podium. I wanted to get at least third, second, or first. And so I ended up doing 10 of these Spartan races that year. And I took fourth twice. How's that for kicking the pants? So frustrated about that. I was like, oh my gosh. So on that day, I finished fourth. But what's interesting is I didn't care much. My team was out there, my people. And so I grabbed some fluids. And I was surprised too, because usually after a race like this, I'm done. I'm exhausted, physically exhausted. But I was able to grab some fluids and run back out there on the field. And about the 5 mile mark, I find Crandall just coming down through the trees, just down this hill. And he did not look good. And I said, "Hey, Crandall, how's it going?" He's like, "I'm fine, right? Cool. I'm glad you're fine." And I sometimes you think you say things without thinking, and this is one of those times. I said, "You've got to be the last one that's gone through here in our group." And he's like, "Yeah, thanks for bringing that up." And I just put my foot in my mouth and I said, "It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine because there's a bit of a loop, and I'm gonna meet you back here at the 8 mile mark, and then we'll go in together at the 8 mile mark." And he said, "All right, sounds good." Now remember, he started his race at 10:30 in the morning. He did not get to the 8 mile mark until 5 in the evening. In fact, when he got there, he said, "Brigham, I can't believe you're still here." And I said, in my head, this time, "I can't believe I'm still here either. This is ridiculous." And he said, "Brigham, I'm done." And I said, "What do you mean you're done? You're still upright." And I could tell he wasn't happy with my happy-go-lucky attitude. And I said, "Look, Crandall, there's only one way out of here. It's up over this hill and around this bend, and I'm going to do it with you. We're going to be side by side. It's going to be great. Just push through it." And he says, "All right." And it was just this kind of conversation throughout, right? Where I needed him to not listen to his emotions. Instead, I needed him to listen to his convictions. I'm pretty sure that Tim Tebow said something like that once. And hopefully he'll forgive me for botching it, but it's the same premise, right? Mm-hmm. So I was just talking him through it, around this bend, around this corner, up over this hill. We did that till about 7:30 at night when he started to hear the cheers from the finish line. And our group was there, and they were cheering him on. And next thing you know, he starts picking up his pace. And now I'm having a hard time keeping up with him. And it's something like out of a movie. You're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool." And he crosses the finish line, and everybody's there cheering him, hugging him. And he stops, and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he says, "Brigham, I got to tell you something." I said, "What's that?" And he says, "I never planned to finish." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? You never planned to finish? You trained, you came to Hawaii, you spent the money, you made the investment. What do you mean you didn't plan to finish?" He says, "Look, I figured 8 miles was good for my first race. That's what I planned to do, is 8 miles. Thank you for helping me finish." The way I felt in that moment, Ben, is worth 1,000 podiums. It was in that moment where I realized that I really didn't care about winning. I didn't care about winning. What I cared about is bringing my team to the finish line. That's what fulfilled me. And it changed my life. I was a different person after that day. And in part, it was the reason why I started writing this book, is I wanted to help contractors experience the same fulfillment that I was feeling, that if we could just change our paradigm just for a moment. We're constantly trying to prove ourselves, constantly. And there comes a point where you don't need to prove yourself anymore. Instead, you need to shift that mindset to something to give. After so many years of running a business and growing it and putting your heart and soul into it, basically what you've done is you've built a way for other families to take care of themselves. Self-confidence, self-reliance, service-mindedness. These are the things that we want to give to people. And when you realize that that's what you have in a business, you've created opportunities for people to feel self-confident, self-reliant, service-minded, and then they can in turn do the same thing. Once you shift that mindset, proving, shift it to something to give, you're going to find that you're going to do a whole lot more not just for your business, but for your community and for the world.
So Brigham, if contractors want to find this book, or the first two that you've written that we spoke about as well, where in the world can they go to find these?
Glad you asked. So you go to brighamdickinson.com. So that's BRIGHAMDICKINSON.com. And that is the best way to get all of the books that I've written.
And I will also say that if you look for us out at the various industry events that we're participating in, we just may have a couple of copies sitting around that we'll be able to pass out and make sure that we have available for folks as people come out and look for us. Brigham, do you have plans for a fourth book?
Absolutely. I don't know exactly what I'm going to write about, but I find myself journaling all the time. And as soon as something is noteworthy in a journal entry, I'm going to say, okay, this is my next book. So yeah, you can count on other books as well, yeah.
Brigham, thank you so much for joining us. And for all of you that are out there, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and like it, share it with other people that you know. Go ahead and follow us so you can see all the other episodes that we have coming up. And Brigham, we hope to have you back here on future episodes that we have. Thank you so much for coming in and joining me, my friend.
Thank you. I'd love that. Let's do it.
All right.